The Afghan Taliban has announced the start of its annual spring offensive. The Taliban marked the beginning of Operation Mansouri on April 28th, named after their former leader Mullah Akhtar Mansour, who was killed in a U.S. drone strike last year. The Taliban outlined a dual military and political approach. Politically, they will focus on developing the areas under their control. A U.S. report released earlier this year estimated the Afghan government has uncontested control over only 57% of the country. Militarily, the Taliban will focus on combating foreign forces. Approximately 8,400 U.S. troops are in country supporting the Afghan military. The announcement comes 1 week after Taliban fighters carried out an attack on an Afghan military base, killing at least 135 soldiers. The top U.S. commander in Afghanistan said more troops are needed to tip the balance against the Taliban. For United News International, I'm Matt Paul.
In part of a debate about the public display of Confederate symbols across the South, Black legislators in Mississippi say they are boycotting a regional meeting that their own state is hosting this summer. They are protesting the rebel emblem on the state flag. The Mississippi Legislative Black Caucus is asking the Southern Legislative Conference to push the state to lose its status as the last state with a flag featuring the Confederate battle emblem. All 8 of Mississippi's public universities, along with several counties and cities, have stopped flying the flag because of the controversial emblem.
CNET has reported that China's internet rules are about to get even tighter. China's internet regulator, the Cyberspace Administration of China, or CAC, announced newly updated regulations that will require online news broadcasters to be licensed by the government to publish news on the internet and social media platforms. The new rules are effective from June 1st. China is notorious for its tight grip on online content. It put in place a censorship firewall, commonly known as the Great Firewall, which blocks popular sites such as Google, Twitter, and Wikipedia, leaving Chinese internet users only with Chinese duplicates of the services, such as Baidu and Weibo.
China's defense ministry has been left saying, whoops, our bad, after a poster celebrating the 68th birthday of the People's Liberation Army Navy was exposed as containing American ships and Russian planes. A poster of the Liaoning, China's first aircraft carrier, was produced by the ministry and shared on its official blog on April 23rd. Problem is, what was meant to be a celebration of the country's navy was actually a huge Photoshop fail. For starters, the 2 vessels alongside the Liaoning are not Chinese, but American amphibious assault ships. Meanwhile, the plane on the deck of the carrier is a Russian MiG-35 fighter. And while those planes in the sky are at least Chinese J-10s, those aircraft aren't actually based on the Liaoning. The image quickly became the subject of online ridicule. China's defense ministry apologized Thursday, saying that it was, quote, sincerely sorry. For United News International, from Washington, D.C., I'm Caitlin Mangum.
Authorities are stumped by unusually high numbers of humpback whale deaths along the eastern coast of the United States. Over 40 humpback whales have been found dead from Maine to North Carolina since the beginning of last year. This is well above the average of 14 per year. Experts examined 20 of the dead whales and determined half died from human causes, such as being run over by boats. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration declared an unusual mortality event April 26th, saying there will be an expert investigation to determine the cause. An unusual mortality event is defined as unexpected significant die-off of any mammal population, demanding immediate response. CNN reported that unusual mortality events for humpback whales were also declared in 2006, 2005, and 2003. The causes were never determined. For United News International, I'm Matt Paul. The U.S. Justice Department will not charge the white police officers involved in the shooting death of a black man, Alton Sterling. The 37-year-old was shot and killed in Louisiana last July as police responded to reports of a man with a gun. Cell phone video shows Sterling on his back, restrained by 2 Baton Rouge officers when the fatal shots were fired. That disturbing video went viral, sparking outrage and unrest. 10 months later, on May 3rd, acting U.S. Attorney Corey Amundson said insufficient evidence exists to file federal criminal charges. He added that negligent negligent and reckless actions do not constitute violations of federal civil rights laws. While the investigation did not yield federal charges, the file will be handed over to Louisiana's Attorney General, who could still file state charges. AG Jeff Landry is withholding comment pending a thorough investigation. Meanwhile, a Sterling family attorney expressed confidence that Landry would bring them justice. For United News International, I'm Matt Paul.
Officials returning to Mosul have said that the damaged city would take at least 5 years to repair and would require billions of dollars of development from Iraq's government. Iraqi government forces, backed by a U.S.-led coalition, have now retaken the eastern half of the city after more than 2 years. Noreddin Kablin, a deputy chairman of the region's council, told Reuters that after Mosul is fully liberated, we need a working plan to restore things to the way they were before 2014, when Islamic State took over. Iraq's army has said it expects to expel Islamic State from the rest of the city by May.
CNN has reported that North Korea has accused an American detained since April of attempting to overthrow the government. The state-run Korean Central News Agency said that Tony Kim, also known as Kim Sang-duk, was detained for hostile acts towards the Pyongyang regime. Kim was seized on the morning of April 22nd at Pyongyang International Airport as he attempted to leave the country following a stint as a professor of accounting at the Pyongyang University of Science and Technology. The report added Kim was intercepted for committing criminal acts of hostility aimed to overturn the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, not only in the past, but also during his last stay before interception. He's being held while an investigation is underway, KCNA said. Kim is the third American North Korea has detained since 2015. University of Virginia student Otto Warmbier was sentenced to 15 years of hard labor in 2016 on charges of committing a hostile act against the state after he reportedly removed a political banner from a hotel. Businessman Kim Dong-chul, arrested a year earlier, is serving 10 years in prison on espionage charges.
NBC News has reported that North Korea is throwing missiles up to show the Trump administration the country is a serious international player. 2 U.S. officials said it doesn't seem to matter to the Kim Jong-un regime whether the tests succeed or fail, and most have failed. On Friday, a missile capable of striking targets in South Korea detonated minutes after launch, scattering debris over land and sea. Called the NK-17, the missile is among those the officials say Pyongyang has launched, knowing they might not be ready. One official said they want to show they can. They believe they learn something new from every launch, success or failure.
North Korea's state media published a rare criticism of China on Wednesday, saying Chinese state media commentaries calling for tougher sanctions over Pyongyang's nuclear program were undermining relations with Beijing and worsening tensions. A commentary carried by the official Korean Central News Agency referred to recent commentaries in China's People's Daily and Global Times newspapers, which it said were widely known as media speaking for the official stance of the Chinese party and government. Chinese state media calls for North Korea to dismantle its nuclear program were a wanton violation of independent and legitimate rights, dignity, and supreme interests of North Korea, and constituted an undisguised threat to an honest-minded neighboring country, which has a long history and tradition of friendship, it said.
On Wednesday, legislators in the state of Ohio took a step towards allowing fracking in state parks. According to reports, lawmakers added a provision in a pending budget that would strip Governor John Kasich of the ability to control licenses for oil and gas drilling practices. The provision, which was added by Ohio's GOP-controlled House, would instead allow the state legislature to control appointments for the Oil and Gas Commission, which is responsible for issuing drilling licenses. Kasich has not named any members to the 4-member commission since the group was created in 2011. The delay, in turn, has since effectively halted any fracking in state parks.
A group of orcas off the coast of California are on a killing spree. The marine mammals killed 4 gray whale calves over the span of a week in late April. Activity marine biologist Nancy Black called unprecedented. She told the Monterey Herald, quote, "The first attack was pretty spectacular because there was 33 killer whales involved." She added that 9 specific orcas belonging to one pod were involved in each of the hunts. Black recorded one of the attacks in Monterey Bay, in which a gray whale calf was separated from its mother and drowned. Gray whales migrate annually from Mexico up the coast of Northern California. Black thinks their late migration this year made the orcas extra hungry and eager to pass on hunting skills to their young. Not all of the recent orca attacks were successful, though. Drone video showed one gray whale mother defending her calf and taking it to safer, shallower waters. For United News International, I'm Camry Caldwell.
South Korea is giving the Philippines a used warship for just $100. Department of National Defense spokesman Arsenio Andolong said April 27, quote, "It will definitely enhance our capability to patrol our waters and perform counter-terrorism missions." It's a Pohang-class warship equipped with anti-sub, anti-ship, and anti-air weapons. While the Philippines is getting the ship for very cheap, it will have to pay for refurbishments. The Philippine Star says the Department of National Defense may spend around 200 million pesos to make the warship ready for combat. Andolong said South Korea may give the Philippines up to 2 more warships because South Korea is replacing its fleet. Reuters says South Korea donated 2 fighter jets to the Philippines earlier this week, and 2 more will be delivered next month. For United News International from Metro Manila, I'm Crystal Yap.
On Wednesday, Donald Trump said that he will work to broker peace talks between Israel and the Palestinians. The vow came the same day Trump hosted Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas at the White House. Despite the claim, Trump offered no clues about how he could revive long-stalled negotiations between the two sides. Trump previously sparked international criticism back in February when he appeared to back away from support for a two-state solution, saying he would leave it up to the parties themselves. While offering no new policy prescriptions, Trump added Wednesday, "I've always heard that perhaps the toughest deal to make is between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Let's see if we can prove them wrong."
On Wednesday, an unarmed missile capable of sending a nuclear bomb across the world was launched from a coastal California military base. The unarmed intercontinental ballistic missile blasted off from Vandenberg Air Force Base and delivered a single re-entry vehicle to a target about 4,200 miles away in the Pacific Ocean. The test, which took 10 months to plan, was aimed at checking the readiness and accuracy of a weapon system that forms part of the U.S. nuclear force. The launch comes amid U.S. expressions of concern about North Korea's nuclear capability.
Denmark has banned 6 people it calls, quote, hate preachers. Denmark banned 5 Islamic clerics and 1 evangelical pastor on May 2nd from the United States, Canada, Saudi Arabia, and Syria. Danish Immigration and Integration Minister Inger Støjberg said, quote, "The government will not accept that hate preachers come to Denmark to preach hatred against Danish society." Denmark passed legislation last year allowing the country to ban foreign religious figures who are believed to be a, quote, threat to public order. The banned evangelical pastor is Terry Jones, who has made headlines before for publicly burning copies of the Quran. The Immigration and Integration Ministry said in a statement the people being banned are, quote, traveling rabid religious preachers who try to undermine our democracy and fundamental values of freedom and human rights. The ban will last for 2 years. For United News International, I'm Neela Uni.
Tens of thousands of Venezuelan government foes led by opposition deputies filled this Caracas highway for as far as the eye could see to tell the government they are not backing down.
How far we get today depends on those who have the weapons. But I can tell you our struggle will go as far as it takes to achieve freedom.
We are seeing that violence brings more violence, that the people are increasingly hurt but also more angry.
That anger is being further fueled by the president's decision to call a constituent assembly to rewrite the Constitution.
The demonstrators weren't told where they were heading, but we've just been informed that this march is heading towards the National Assembly, and that's precisely where President Nicolás Maduro is gathering at this hour with his supporters.
The president personally delivered a decree to the Electoral Council to invoke a constituent assembly, taunting opponents who argue he is consolidating a dictatorship.
You wanted to vote, we're going to vote. You wanted dialogue, here we have a constituent assembly.
Back at the march, young masked protesters prepared to do battle in what everyone knew was coming.
I got tired of marching and being repressed like a dog, so now I march ready to defend myself.
But they were no match for riot police. They hurled tear gas and water cannon with military precision. While some tried to fight back with stones and Molotov cocktails, the vast majority were forced to turn back, determined, it seems, to return to fight another day. Lucia Newman, Al Jazeera, Caracas.
Large attendance and big themes at this year's World Economic Forum on Africa in Durban. Another gathering of world business leaders who say they're here to help Africa sort out its problems through inclusive access to technology. To achieve that goal, the forum insists on what it calls a responsive and responsible leadership. President Jacob Zuma is here with 18 of his cabinet ministers. He's been facing widespread popular discontent over allegations of corruption and questions over his ties to the wealthy elite. But he tells Al Jazeera he's here to represent the poor.
Mr. President, this conference to us is a mixture of heads of state and big businesses. Who represents the poor population here? And why are they unhappy with this conference?
Well, I haven't heard that there are people who are unhappy. Maybe I've been reading different kind of news.
There are demonstrations.
Well, demonstrations are always there.
So who represents them? Give me the name of someone, just one person.
Who?
The name of someone here.
Who elected me? Who, just 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute. I must help him.
Yeah.
Who elected this president? Are not the masses. And then who represents the masses? It's not me.
Talking about Africans.
Outside, protesters have been on the streets accusing African governments, including Zuma, of plotting with big international business elites to loot Africa's resources.
We are challenging the World Economic Forum that it has failed us after many years of being in operation. It has failed the people of Africa.
The poverty rate in South Africa is near 60% according to official figures. Many here say they haven't seen the promises of the post-apartheid era fulfilled. With large corporations deeply entrenched and vestiges of colonial imperialism still visible everywhere, some people say they can't trust their leaders' deals with Western partners at the forum.
They talk left, but they walk right. And you can tell that by virtue of the kinds of men that are here in Durban. King Mswati of Swaziland, Yoweri Museveni, Edgar Lundu from Zambia. These are people who are absolute oppressors in their countries.
Over the years, opposition to the World Economic Forum in poor countries has grown louder, while the organization's global reach has only got bigger. Mohammed Val, Al Jazeera, Durban.
Monitoring the killer mountain. Experts are checking water pressure, moisture content and GPS markers at the Mithotamula rubbish dump to prevent a repeat of last month's disaster. For Feroz Khan, it's too late. His home was one of dozens buried in a wall of mud and sludge that surged from the base of the rubbish dump. His family escaped with seconds to spare.
We are thankful to God that we survived. Now we have to start life over, to get back up again.
A number of families who lost their homes have been rehoused, but the bigger issue of garbage is not going away. Protests by residents near other rubbish dumps spread, prompting the government to declare garbage disposal an essential service, meaning any move to disrupt operations would be illegal. One of the reasons for so much garbage is that most households do not sort their waste.
Sometimes there's polythene with food waste. If this happens, we don't take it, and we tell people to sort it again.
Waste collection and disposal is done by local authorities. Some insist that rubbish is separated by households, but this doesn't always happen.
Therefore, I think in Sri Lanka it is fundamental, or it is very important to introduce new set of regulations, laws and regulations, to make the segregation at source mandatory.
Fernando says this is vital if Sri Lanka is to manage its waste more effectively.
With Sri Lankans reportedly producing the highest amount of garbage per person, you would think that recycling facilities like this are working to maximum capacity. But industry representatives say many recycling companies are closing because they're not getting enough waste.
Viridis is one of Sri Lanka's largest plastic recyclers, in business for over a decade. It's only handling half of its 300-ton capacity at present.
We have capacity, not only us, recyclers have capacity, but they are not getting enough material to recycle.
Muthukumarana's boss, a Briton who was one of the pioneers in the field, has a suggestion.
In Europe, what they do, they charge you 20 rupees, or in there it's like 10 pence per bag. Yeah. It's decreased the usage by 80% overnight. If they did this here, then the matter's cured.
Making polluters pay in proportion to the waste they produce is another option. But whether the government has the will to take such a politically risky decision remains to be seen. Minna Fernandez, Al Jazeera, Colombo.
This is Eastern Ghouta, a rebel-held area on the outskirts of Damascus. Rarely a day passes without government airstrikes or fighting between rival opposition groups. A situation that has made life difficult for people here. Abu Ibrahim cannot afford to buy wood for heating. Instead, he cuts bits of what's left of his furniture and rags to burn in the stove.
Life has turned into a tragedy here. Prices are rising. Just to give you an idea, a kilogram of sugar has doubled over the last few days.
Tough times for the thousands of people trapped inside Eastern Ghouta, which has been under siege since 2014. Bayan is a pharmacist. She's concerned she might not get enough medicine for the people if the siege is not lifted and aid not allowed in. The price of some medications have increased by 100%.
The government blockade must be immediately lifted and medicine must be allowed into besieged areas. The price of medication has to be regulated so we can maintain a standard pricing.
Abu Yazan studies English at a local institute. Despite the daily challenges and the constant airstrikes, he still hopes to graduate, find a job and improve his family's living conditions. But he's skeptical about the future.
These are tough times for us. The opposition is losing ground and the siege is getting worse, and civilians pay the price. I cannot see a solution. Other neighborhoods like the Muadamiya have been evacuated. This is an international conspiracy against the Syrians.
Despite the somber mood in this neighborhood, people remain defiant. They say they will stay here no matter what happens next.
Eastern Ghouta remains the last rebel stronghold in Damascus. This explains why the government is tightening the siege to force thousands of fighters and their families to leave the area or face more airstrikes and starvation. Hashim Ahbar, Al Jazeera, Gaziantep.